Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have two fascinating guests with me today. My main guest is someone who was actually, I started following his work back when he did like interviews with Art Bell, because you guys know I'm such a big Art Bell fan. And who I'm speaking to about is Dr. Courtney Brown. He's a mathematician and social scientist who teaches in the Department of Political Science at Emory University, but his independent work is in remote viewing. Dr. Brown is the director and founder of the Farsight Institute, www.farsight.org, a nonprofit research and educational organization dedicated to the study of phenomena of non-local consciousness known as remote viewing. He's been published peer-reviewed research on the subject of premier scientific outlets, which has spoken internationally and hosted prestigious venues, including various universities. You can find Dr. Brown at his sites at www.courtneybrown.com and www.farsightprime.com. And my co-host today will be Nathan from the Voices of Orion Project. You guys know Nathan. We've done many shows together. Nathan tries to expose the negative ET agenda that he feels is still going on. So, Nathan has expressed his extreme interest in Farsight Prime in the past. Nathan's been a big proponent for the Farsight Prime Institute. So I figured it would be kind of apropos to kind of get Nathan and Dr. Brown together and see what you guys thought of that. So with all that said, I want to welcome the gentlemen to the show. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm great, and thanks for inviting me on. It's great to see everybody.
It's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So Dr. Brown, I know you wanted to talk about today, you wanted to come on and talk about your research into being able to uncover UFOs. I watched your interview on Leak Project with Rex, and then I watched your interview with Journey to Truth. They were both really good. What you're doing is really amazing. Can you kind of explain to the people who might have not saw those, what's going on and what you've been able to uncover?
Sure. As you said, we at Farsight, we mostly do remote viewing. We use procedures that are derivative of those that were used by the military, and then used for espionage purposes. They still use it to this day. However, our procedures are much more advanced. They're much more complicated, and the viewers that we use are extremely well trained. They go through a year of full-time training before they even do anything with us, and then they've been with us for a long time, many years. And Farsight is the only place where there are full public projects of remote viewing. So there's a lot of people that say they do remote viewing, but find one public project. They just don't have them. So Farsight is the only place. We have two websites, farsight.org, which is the Institute's website, and it's a good sort of organization for all that we do. But the big one is our streaming service where we have all of our major projects, and that's farsightprime.com. Now, since the 1990s, late 1990s, we've been doing this remote viewing stuff. However, always, from the very beginning, we knew that we would eventually have to have something where we prove that the extraterrestrials that we ended up finding all over the place and doing the remote viewing stuff, which it's a mental process. You might call it psychic, but it's so much more advanced than that. We don't use that word. But nonetheless, we would have to prove that the extraterrestrials actually exist. Because people could say, they could dismiss the remote viewing because they maybe don't understand it or how it's worked or what we do. But then they could say, well, we're not going to believe in extraterrestrials either. It's all fluffy stuff, so we don't believe that. So we knew at some point we'd have to prove. Now, remember, I'm a mathematician. I work in a social science program, but the word prove means something to me as an academic. Now, I don't do this at the university, but nonetheless, the word prove means something to me. I'm not using it loosely. We would have to eventually prove it. Now, we couldn't prove that extraterrestrials were real, that the UFOs were real until this year. We had to wait until cameras became available to the professional and prosumer market that allowed the stuff to happen, allowed for us to actually capture UFOs. What was needed was, and the cameras came out for the first time that we could get access to in 2022. We use Panasonic Lumix GH6 cameras because we needed to have 4K or better. We often shoot 5K or 6K, but at least 4K resolution. We needed to have 120 frames per second, and we needed to be able to shoot in infrared. Infrared, 4K, 120 frames per second. Panasonic came out with the cameras that could do that last year. So we started with that in this year in January. And the very first time we got our cameras, we had to get the money to get the cameras. They aren't cheap, but we got the cameras, and we use those cameras to shoot videos of UFOs. Now, we didn't know. What I'm going to tell you is what we didn't know. What we didn't know was how many UFOs there are out there. What we found out, and this, I'm not kidding, I'm not lying, I'm not cheating you. You can do it yourself. We're not trying to just show you our footage. We're trying to show you how to get your own footage so you can prove it, so that you know that it's correct. Because you can always say, oh, he's lying, or he did Photoshop or whatever. But if I tell you how we do it, then it's not cheating. So what we do is, the very first time we set up the cameras to shoot it, and we put the cameras on, the first 10 minutes we found 50 UFOs in the middle of the day. You can't see them in visible light. They're totally invisible. But we found them. We could see the metal of them. We could see the configuration. We could see them. They were flying over my house, for gosh sakes. They were 50 of them in a 10-minute video. So what we have found is any 10-minute video you want, anywhere in the world, if you set up the camera right, just point it up and you shoot, and you know how to edit it afterwards, and you have to shoot 120 frames a second in infrared, and you have to shoot at least 4K. Any 10-minute video, you'll find UFOs. Like, the zillions of them are up there. Now, what we have found, and I during this podcast, I want to show you where you can see examples of the stuff that we've done. But what we found is that there is not only a huge cover-up and with regard to the government, with regard to the UFOs, and that's not in dispute anymore. You have David Grush coming out, you have whistleblowers coming out, and just the last couple of days, you've got Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, saying that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have all types of whistleblowers in Congress saying even more stuff. And just the other day, Marco Rubio, this is a senator, Marco Rubio, said what's really going on is that the UFO thing is being run by a military-industrial complex that is completely independent and doesn't answer to anybody. That's what the senator who's in charge of all of this just said, like, the other day. So, and that article with that interview with Marco Rubio came out in the Daily Mail yesterday, or actually maybe it was today, but it was like real recent. But the point is, it's no longer in dispute that this stuff happens. What was not understood is that you don't have to have lucky situation where you see a photo and then you're trying to analyze the photo. What we have now is don't worry about somebody else's photo. If you have the right camera and you know how to edit it, and we show you how to do that, we can give you 50. You can get 50 on your own camera in 10 minutes. It's like all over the place. And some of them are small, like orbs. Some of them are huge. Some of them are really weird shapes. You can see some of the metal on some of them. They do all types of things that, in terms of the aerobatics and stuff. Now, what we do is we use the footage that we've been getting, and we have it. And now this is verifiable because this is raw footage. Now, you could always say that it's cheating. Then the response to that, you see, there's something called cockroaches that come out of the woodwork. They're called debunkers. Debunkers will come out like cockroaches out of the woodwork at the blink of an eye, and they will say, oh, that's Photoshop. Well, that's a glitch. That's this. It's that. And you say, okay, say whatever you want about my stuff. Get a camera. I'll show you how to do it with your stuff. Are you going to say your own camera is lying to you? So the point is, there are tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of these UFOs overhead. This is the key. They are trying to hide themselves. They're spending a huge effort to keep the public dumbed down. Now, the military, the military is basically split. Now, I don't know if it's exactly 50%, but I'm just going to say 50%. But the military is split. Say half of the military definitely wants the disclosure process to go on, to happen. The other half has relationships with the extraterrestrials that are negative, that are authoritarian, that are oppressive. Now, this is not in dispute that there are written agreements between the extraterrestrials that operate on Earth and human governments. Chaim Eshed, the former head of the Israeli Space Directorate, that's NASA in Israel, the Israeli version of NASA. Chaim Eshed, the former director of that, and he was also a general, now he's a professor. He has publicly stated and in writing in Israeli newspapers that there are written agreements between the U.S. government and the extraterrestrials, as well as the Israeli government and extraterrestrials, and some other governments and the extraterrestrials, to allow them to operate here. It's not in dispute anymore. You can Google it if you want. The point is that these agreements allow what we call the bad ETs to operate. What we have found is that the extraterrestrials have basically two sides. Now it's way more complicated than that. There's all types of extraterrestrials, but there's basically two sides in the crudest possible categorization. We call them the good guys and the bad guys. The bad guys are authoritarian, and there are, and don't get into a species thing. They have species of similar species on both sides, like grays. There's grays on the good side, grays on the bad side. There's reptilians. The reptilians are almost entirely on the bad side, but there are a few reptilians, very few on the good side. But nonetheless, you have basically the good guys and the bad guys. The bad guys dominate the Earth environment. So when you're taking videos of UFOs, 98% of the time you're getting videos of the bad guys. The bad guys want to have the written agreements, according to Chaim Eshed. The written agreements are that they do not want the public to know about them. That's part of the written agreements. You don't have to trust me on that. You can Google it. And so the issue is that when Chaim Eshed came out and talked to that, he basically just said something that everyone's already known for a long time, and other people have talked about it as well. But it was interesting that he came out and did talk about it, given his position. Now, the issue is that in the Earth environment, the negative ETs are dominant. However, in the solar system, the positive ETs, the good guys, have way more resources. They have more ships, more military, more firepower, and everything. However, and the good guys are trying to free this planet and humanity from the bad guys. The bad guys are basically running this place as a prison. They don't want anyone to know what they're doing. They have secret agreements. They have repressive things. They're doing things you don't want to know. Proof. You want me to prove it? Get your camera out. You can see them. If they were good guys and they wanted you to know what they were doing, they wouldn't be doing it in infrared. They wouldn't be doing it at 100. The speeds that they go at are like 20,000 plus miles an hour. That's 32,000 kilometers an hour. And we actually have in our own projects that you can see on farsightprime.com, we have a show called the Identified Flying Objects, where we have one of our remote viewers who's a host of that show called Intisam, works with Lincoln Lounsbury. Lincoln Lounsbury is one of the leading air traffic control experts on the planet Earth. He's worked in the busiest airports, and including for years, Washington, D.C., the major airport in Washington, D.C. He's published in in aeronautical journals. He works with us in our show, Identified Flying Objects, and he analyzes our footage. And he's the one who's telling us the speeds and the flight characteristics of looking at the footage. And we are routinely getting 20,000 miles an hour. Now, guys, you cannot see something that's flying at 20,000 miles an hour in the atmosphere. Even if it wasn't being cloaked with infrared, you couldn't see it. 20,000 miles an hour, they can go from one side of the country to the other side of the country in just a few seconds, minutes. 20,000 miles an hour, you don't see it no matter what. So you have to shoot it at 120 frames a second. And then When we analyze it, one of the first things we do is we slow it down a lot. We typically slow our footage down to 20 times the speed that it was once. So if it was, for example, a 1 second video, we stretch it out to be a 20-second video so that we slow it down and then play it in 20 seconds. So a 10-minute video, 20 times 10 minutes, you're talking hours of footage. So that's why we shoot only 10, 15 minutes at a time, because analyzing, if you shoot an hour, you're going to have weeks of footage you're going to have to go through. So, but there's so many UFOs, you don't have to worry about it. So I don't know what your computer situations are, if you're able to share your screen, but if you are able to share your screen in this podcast, I can actually show you some of these videos. Like now.
Let me see if I can pull up Instagram. Like,
Instagram,
is it on Instagram? Like,
yes, it's
where do
Instagram.
I need to go?
Courtney Brown Farsight, Courtney Nosk. Oh no, I'm sorry, Courtney Brown, like the color, Courtney Brown, and then the word Farsight, Farsight. Courtney Courtney.
I can try to pull it up. Yeah, I can try to pull it up as we're talking. Like sometimes my computer runs slow when I'm running StreamYard, so I'll try to pull it up. But what I was going to say is I have a couple questions. Like I want to get them off so like I don't forget them. One of them is I was seeing like, is it the infrared that makes you, enables you to see the UFOs? And then regarding the negative ETs, do you think this means that we're in some kind of prison planet? The fact that they want to stay cloaked, they don't want us to know what their agenda is? Or do you think that like it's like Kaya Machete says that our government has like a secret agreement with them to not reveal themselves, so it kind of doesn't mess up religion and stuff like that? Like, you know, people say that sometimes. So like, I don't know, it's two different questions there, but like whatever you think, whatever you want to answer first.
We have done over 50 projects, major projects, and there's nowhere else on the internet that you can find any projects. So we're the only place. FarsightPrime.com, we have over 50 projects that we've done investigating the aliens. And we can say authoritatively, they want to keep themselves secret because they're doing stuff that you would not want to know. If there was full disclosure of that the extraterrestrials exist, then you'd have to find out what they've been doing. And then you'd be saying, well, why are we doing this with those people? Why do we have agreements with those people? They're doing stuff that you really honestly don't want to have happen. They are running this place as a prison. And what they're interested in is not the minerals. They're not interested in gold or uranium. They're not interested in the biological stuff. They're interested in you. The big resource is the 8 billion people on the planet. Now, in addition to that, the extraterrestrials don't think of this as biological beings of 8 billion people or something like that. We don't use the word soul or spirit. We use the word Isby, someone who is for the purpose of being. That's it. We are all Isbys. And these biological bodies that we have, they just are, they're biological machines. They are not who we are. Now, the extraterrestrials understand this completely, and they don't take the biological body seriously. So the issue is, what you have is 8 billion biological beings with Isbys inside of them. And I don't know how many billions of others in the wings, like 30 billion in the wings. You have the huge population of Isbys here. That's what they want. And what they use these Isbys for, they animate other bodies with them. They do you can't do anything in this galaxy without an Isby. So the point is the Isbys animate everything. So these Isbys are used for mercenary military type forces. They're used for prostitution. They're used for everything that you can possibly imagine. Everything that you've seen that's bad in the criminal networks on Earth times 10 is what they're used for. And they have total access to it. Now, the good ETs don't want that. They want it to stop. But they can't invade. They are military and more powerful, not across the galaxy, but in this solar system. They have more resources than the negative ETs. But they can't invade. Let's say, look, guys, just let us say that we said that the Russian and the Chinese populaces are being run by authoritarian governments, and we think they're not getting the right information, and so we're going to invade and free them. What would happen if we invaded Russia or if we invaded China? The Russian people and the Chinese people, they would rise up and say to their governments, help, save us, we're being invaded, protect us. So you can't just invade a country no matter what's happening. So the good ETs can't just invade here. What would happen was that the bad ETs would actually, the populaces would say, my gosh, we're being invaded by extraterrestrials. And they would think that the good ETs are actually the bad ones, and they would ask everyone to defend them. So the free will ETs can't do that. Now, you have my Instagram page up. You did great. Let me just show you one thing. Let me give you one. So let's go to the, okay, that's a good one. You can click on that one if you want.
I can't guarantee it's gonna play fast.
That's okay. Go to the, can you go back to the one where you see all of them? If I have the ability to share my screen, I have a really great computer. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, my computer is moving slow. Nate, I'll let you get a question in as soon as we.
Click on the middle one. See if that one will run. That's during the Pensacola Naval Air Station.
Do you want to do that? Do you want to share your screen?
If I'm allowed to share my screen, I can do that.
Oh shoot! I closed out.
Of course, I don't know the StreamYard thing.
We can do that. That way you can share your screen. So you have to hit present at the bottom.
All right.
And then you hit you hit present, share screen, and then you hit entire screen, and then you'll be able to share your entire screen.
Okay, let me actually get my screen up so you can actually see it.
Sorry, my computer's wigging out today. Did you have any questions, Nate, while we're waiting?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make some observations. I wanted to thank Dr. Courtney Brown for all of his hard work, and to all of his remote viewers over the years. I've been watching his shows since roughly the beginning, and I just wanted to say thank you. I also wanted to mention too that it's excellent. It's actually very inspiring, and I'm very happy to see that they're doing this work right now. I first heard of this about 20 years ago with researcher and filmmaker Jose Escamilla. They were doing modifications to camcorders on the night shot setting. And this was back when you could pull stuff open and solder it yourself. So since then, there hasn't been anybody who's been interested in this and who's done anything with it. So I wanted to thank him once again for that. I also wanted to say, too, that he's absolutely right. The negative ETs do not want their presence to be known. You can see evidence of that in Egypt because they don't allow any type of depictions of reptilians or any type of non-human entities except for things that are very kind of similar to being human, other than, maybe elongated heads or skin color depicted in their iconography. So he's absolutely right there. And I'm just going to leave it there for a moment, and I want to see what he has to say next.
I just wanted to say, Nate, I remember Jose Escamilla with rods. I remember he used to come on Art Bell and talk about where he was filming rods. I don't know if you guys remember that. Courtney, you're an old Art Bell guy. You remember Jose Escamilla would film the rods? I don't know if he was, but are you able to share your screen?
I can share my screen, I think. Are you seeing now my Instagram page?
No, we're just looking at you.
I'm not seeing anything. You got to flip over to it. I can add it. Hold on. Let me add it to the stream. It just may take a second. I think it goes for my permission to add it to the stream. And there we go. It should be pulling up here momentarily. Sorry guys. StreamYard's a bitch sometimes to deal with. There you go, Courtney.
Do you see the Instagram page now?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we can see your Instagram.
Let me see here. Okay, do you see the video playing now?
Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
Those are 4 Blue Angels jets flying over the Pensacola Naval Air Station, and that's a UFO that's flying right by them. Now you can see it's going many times faster than the actual Blue Angels jets. See the Blue Angels jets with the trails? Now that thing was totally invisible. It was totally invisible in visible light. So if you didn't use infrared, you couldn't see it. It's also totally invisible because of speed. You had to see it in 120 frames a second, or it was not visible. So that's a big deal. So anyway, so okay, and also we had to zoom in. We had to zoom. That's why 100 and that's why 4K is really important. Okay, so let me see if I can look at. How about you? Let me show you another one. Okay. You see this one? This is like a rotating UFO. This is right over my house. Now you can see it. See the thing that looks like something in the front? Well, it eventually shifts to the middle and then to the rear. So it's actually spinning. And again, this is 120 frames a second. That's why you see it jerking. That's each one of the frames. You see this thing? This is that thing was going over 20,000 miles an hour over my house. That's how we see it. I mean, you couldn't see these until these cameras became invisible. Okay, so you can say that the military had this stuff. Okay, but we didn't have this stuff. That's the difference. Okay, now watch this one. Now let's go back to the Pensacola Naval Air Station. Do you see that white thing go zooming across? And then it goes down between the trees. It's going to come back again. Again, totally invisible. And this is definitely 32,000 kilometers an hour over 20,000 miles an hour. Here, you see it again? Do you see it again?
Yes, I do.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, that was over the Pensacola Naval Air Station. Then you can say, okay, there was a couple UFOs. No, listen to this. Look at this one. When the air show started, these are the UFOs that were coming down. There were hundreds of them. Do you see them?
Oh my God!
And this is slowed down to 1/20th of the speed. So these things were going, 10, 15, some of them 20,000 miles an hour. Nothing was visible. Look, I was there. I was shooting this stuff. Nothing was visible in visible light. Then you can say, well, it's dust. No, these things are focused the cameras are focused at infinity, and dust doesn't fly at 20,000 miles an hour. This is, those things we have measured. We had flight traffic control people actually do the estimate. Do you see how many there are?
Yeah. It's also interesting to say that this is also happening outside the planet too. We do have some footage from, I think, the space shuttle. Are you sure?
Yeah, there's also very good footage from the ISS that they let leak out, and some people who watched the ISS live were able to see it and record it, and that has actually happened. Take a look at this, guys. This is over my house. There it is.
Oh my God!
Now watch it.
That's definitely a fast walker.
Just keep watching. Just keep watching. You see the jet at the bottom? It looks like it's stationary. It's actually going like 700 miles an hour.
Right.
The UFO flies right by it, but it looks like the jet's stationary. Do you see it again? It was flying over my house so many times, I caught it a zillion times. It's like a cigar shape. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
20,000 miles an hour over my house. It was going from one end of the horizon to the other end of the horizon in a small split second. Any place, wherever we set up our cameras and shoot, we get the same thing. So I'm not telling you to believe me. You can call me a liar. You can do whatever you want. All I'm telling you is, can we at least just tell you how to do it yourself? You can believe yourself. The cockroaches, called debunkers, they're going to come out no matter what somebody shows you and say, oh, that was Photoshop. You did that with special effects. No matter what you say, oh, it was swamp gas. It was a glitch. They're going to say stuff. No matter what, they're going to do that. But you can overcome that by simply saying, look, do it yourself. You can see these things yourself. So there are just so many. And this was a tumbling UFO. You see how it was literally tumbling over my house. And we actually looked at it and we got close to it. You'll see it's actually it's not tumbling. It's actually two UFOs that are rotating around each other. It's a two-part thing. It's got like two saucers that are like rolling around each other. And you'll see it split in a second. You'll see it split. And then when you see it split, you say,
guys,
oh, that's
share this video with your friends. Like, I was going to say, share this video with people who might not be subscribed. This is the disclosure we've been wanting. This is like, it's not official disclosure from the government or anything, but it's showing you that they're there, and they're obviously staying cloaked. And I guess what we're going to get into after this is like why they're staying closed, like the bigger agenda, and that kind of gets into like human trafficking and
I'm gonna stop sharing because you can actually I can actually show you one more thing actually.
Wait, hold on. I accidentally removed it. Let me add it back in. Don't close out just yet because I definitely want to see it. I'll just add it back to the stream.
Okay.
It just takes a second to load. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay.
I don't know why it's not loading. Just kicked us out. It must be. Hold on.
Must be gremlins.
Yeah, it's StreamYard. They're really hard to work with. Like I have issues with them all the time. Like it's just showing up as a black screen. I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, there we
It's
go.
okay.
Okay, there we go. We're back.
Okay, I'm having trouble myself getting our website to come up. Let me see if I can go to my personal website and let me go to the Farsight Institute's website.
When someone from the audience, my friend Bryson, who runs my Discord, I'd have to give him. He said it must be nice to take a day trip to Earth. That's hilarious. I never really thought of it that way. That's probably what these ETs think. They probably take a trip here, leave, and come back, and nobody knows the difference, right? It's crazy.
Okay, now in terms of the screen share, are you looking at Farsight's website right now?
No, we can't see it.
No, it shut out. You can reshare your thing, and I'll add it to the.
I didn't stop it. Let me see. Okay, tell me if it's working now.
Not yet.
If it didn't, okay, something popped up at the bottom of the screen. I just have to add it. It's taking a second.
There you go. The NSA came through with. They actually came through with the goods. Thank you, NSA. Appreciate that. We have to give them.
I would definitely say it's them. Like they definitely don't want this probably getting out. And I mean, like then we have to worry about the video getting flagged. But I'm not gonna worry. I don't think we're doing anything wrong. So we haven't said anything that's like against policy or anything like that.
No. We're not banned by this stuff because half the military wants this stuff out. If they were
that's something I wanted to talk to you about. That's important, right? There's obviously a good side and a bad side. So do you think there's a side like working with like channels like, well, maybe not mine because I'm not big enough, but like, do you think there's a military presence wanting this stuff out, Courtney?
Okay, let me answer that in a second. First of all, can you see the Farsight's website?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, look at the menu on the left. This helps organize all of our projects. They go all the way down. We have all these projects that we've done, all of which are available on farsightprime.com. But anyway, look at the fourth link on the menu. It says recording UAP/UFOs. If you click on that link, what you get is this page. And this is the complete description in writing. We also have videos on farsightprime.com where we show people how to do it. But for people who want a written summary of what to do, the cameras that we use, the lens, the IR filters, how to get the camera converted to be able to do that, the settings for the videos, everything is here, including how to edit. So it's no longer, okay, I can stop sharing now. I'm going to stop sharing so you can take it back. It's no longer a situation of us trying to show you the best picture and then convince you. Now disclosure is inevitable because everybody can make their own pictures. And it's not like there's only one UFO. Anyone can make the pictures because there's zillions of them. And that tells you how much of an oppressive situation we have right now. You have literally tens of thousands of UFOs in the Earth's atmosphere at any one time. So that at any 10 minutes that you pick in the middle of the day, you can get like 50 UFOs flying across your house. That's how bad it is. And they don't want you to know that they're there. It's only because the new camera footage, the new cameras came out. Okay, the military had better cameras in the past, but we didn't have them. Now we have them, and you can buy them yourself. You can also convert cell phones to actually take pictures. It's not perfect. It's not great. You don't get the high resolution stuff. But those 3D glasses that have like red on one side and blue on the other.
Yes.
If you cut the glass part, cut the ear things off, and staple them together, so you have both blue and red together, you can make something like this. And if you tape this over the lens of your cell phone, it essentially makes it into an infrared camera, because what it does is it blocks mostly visible light, but the red lets in some of the infrared, and the blue a little bit of the ultraviolet. But basically what it does is it causes the cell phone to go freak out, and it uses a automatic gain control to let in as much light as possible. And when it lets in as much light as possible, the light that can come in is going to be infrared, because they got the red filter on there. So it's a way of tricking the cell phone into doing infrared. Now, if you do that, a lot of cell phones can shoot at 4K. If you do that, shoot it at 4K. And if the cell phone can shoot at least 60 frames a second, that's good. And the other thing is, basically, you want to have the cell phone just pointed straight up and shoot for 10 minutes and then go analyze. You'll see all types of stuff. The better the camera, the higher the resolution, the clearer it is when you zoom in and post while you're editing the stuff in like Adobe Premiere. But yeah, disclosure is inevitable now, because it's possible for everybody to see this stuff. And you don't have to worry about the cockroaches called debunkers, because you're not trying to convince people that your video is the best and the one that people should believe. What we're trying to do is simply show people how to take their own photos. Now, their own videos. I'm going to be giving a lecture. I'm giving a lecture, for example, at the University of Indiana in this summer to like 700 academics. This is getting out slowly but surely. And so once you realize that the extraterrestrials are real, then the next thing you're going to ask, well, what do we know about the extraterrestrials? One of the first things is that they communicate. Typically, their main method of communication is not English. It's telepathy. Then you can say, well, what do you mean telepathy? We have to prove telepathy works? There is a reason why humans are dumbed down with respect to communicating telepathically. That's a whole nother show. It's a whole nother thing. But the point is, that's the normal way of communicating. If you have someone running a ship and you're telling somebody, let's say sort of a humanoid person that looks like us, is piloting, is captain of a ship, and there's some beings that you might call gray type being at the control panel, and he wants to tell them, let's go over that direction. He's not going to say it in English. It's communicated telepathically, and it's very clear communication. There's no ambiguity. It's as clear as verbal language. Humans can't do that easily, and there's a reason for that. But before they came to Earth, they could do that normally. It's a special case. Once people get put here, there's a reason why that ability is sort of dumbed down. But anyway, so telepathy is the normal way of communicating, and remote perception, which we call remote viewing, is normal out there as well. They know that's how they spy on each other, and so we have been, trying to use those procedures that are normal for the rest of the galaxy. So we have these huge projects, and all of our projects have verifiable elements in it. So and the people do all of their work. All of our remote viewers do work totally blind. They're never told anything about the nature of the project or anything else. They do all of their work, and they do it cinematically, nicely. They record their final work on video in front of light boards, and it really looks nice when they do it. So it's very entertaining to actually watch. They're highly trained viewers, they're highly trained presenters, and they do it on light boards. So it's like they're drawing in space. That you see their hands, their face, everything else is black, and they're drawing the ink. It's a very nice look, but you get to see what they're actually describing. And the projects that we have cover the full gamut of everything from all of the major all of the major archaeological stuff that you'd be interested in, the Great Pyramid of Giza, all of the major stuff dealing with even the human soul after death, what happens to it. We have a major project called the death traps, so you can see why this is a prison. The prison operates as a prison because when people die, you've heard the story, when people die you see the light. That's not normal.
Yeah.
That light is it's a thing. Isbies are attracted to aesthetic things. It's part of a thing. It draws you in like a moth is drawn to a light. And once you get close to it, you get stuck in a trap. And that trap, basically, the more you struggle against it, the more you get stuck in it. It leads to basically a section where you get electrocuted. And now you cannot kill an Isbie. You cannot kill somebody, but you can trap it. And a voltage that's way higher than lightning, like billions of volts, gets shot into that Isbie. And what it does is it rattles it. It rattles Isbie. You lose your memory of who you were, and you get rattled so you don't have telepathic and remote perception capabilities like you used to have. And then it's all done by AI. Then you get approached by the Council of Elders, and they say, "We think you have a few more things that you need to work out. You should go back and work on these things a little bit longer." So people get persuaded to go back in, what you might call reincarnation. The reality is, you've been around for like 1,000,000 years. You don't need another lifetime on this planet and you don't need to be, you're not something, there's no wrinkles that you have to work out. It's a trap. It's a recycling trap to keep everybody here so that they don't want people to get out. And it's the bad ETs that run this system. Now, it's not totally operational like it used to be. Back in the old Egyptian pyramid days, it was totally ironclad. There's been some military confrontations. It's a little weaker than it used to be. It's a little bit degraded. That's why you have modern architecture that looks like the type of architecture you have elsewhere in the galaxy, like skyscrapers and stuff like that. That's why you have modern technology type stuff coming out, cell phones and cameras and things like that. We're remembering the stuff that we used to have. So this remembering process is starting to come out. And so the process of sort of rattling everybody is slowly decaying, but it's still there. Okay. Anyway, so this is a prison system. There is no ambiguity. If you want to say, but where is hell? This is it. This planet is hell. This is it. There's probably no other place on the whole galaxy that is as bad as this place. And so if you think, oh, but it's so nice, I went to the Rocky Mountains, it was good. Okay, they have a few nice things here. But the basic thing is you're stuck here. People cannot get out. That's the problem. And the good ETs are trying to crack this. They're trying to break that. Now, the bad ETs, which dominate on the planet Earth, have the following advantage. The good ETs are sort of fanatical with regard to free will. They absolutely respect free will. And it is if the humans on this planet, of their own free will, decide to align themselves with the bad ETs, the good ETs can't do anything about that. They're not going to invade and then capture everybody and throw everybody into re-education camps. There's nothing they can do. So the good ETs this is a very crucial time in our history. And this is why your podcast is so important. The reason it's so important is because there's problems brewing right now. There's problems in Europe and problems in Asia. There's problems brewing. What's happening is the bad ETs are trying to trick the governments into signing renewed agreements. If they sign those renewed agreements, the old agreements are getting pretty old, they're wearing thin. If they sign the new agreements, then the good ETs will leave the system. They're not going to invade. There's nothing they can do. In fact, if they did try to invade, the bad ETs wouldn't think twice about simply blowing up the entire planet because they get the resource anyway. The people would all be scooped up with the so-called death traps, and they could just move them somewhere else. So it has to be a situation of free will. So with disclosure, you will get a population on the planet that will rise up and say, what? You've been doing what? We don't want to align ourselves with the bad ETs. We want the good ETs. And then the good ETs would not be an invading force. They'd be a rescuing force. But that's why disclosure is so important. Sorry to talk so long. I'm a professor, so talking is natural for me.
Hey,
Nate, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've actually got three. I'd like to just go from one to the next. The first one I have for you, Dr. Courtney Brown, is what is the average cost to get one of these cameras for the regular everyday person to get started on this themselves?
Okay, there's a few items. The actual camera you can get for like 1,600, but you had to add a lens to it. That's another 900, something like that plus. And then so you're really talking. You're really, and then you have to have the camera shipped out to a company that we use a company called lifepixel.com. So we use a company called LifePixel, and they convert the camera. So what the camera is, the camera has a sensor on it. Now that sensor has a piece of glass on top of it, and that glass screens out infrared and ultraviolet, because normal when you're doing photography, you don't want infrared or ultraviolet on that sensor to get the best images. So LifePixel takes your camera, you ship it to them, and they take that sensor off. You can do it yourself, but I don't recommend it. You'll break your camera, I guarantee you, and you'll lose that whole investment. You spend a couple $100 to have professionals remove that piece of glass. Now there are a few other places that also remove that glass, but they often put another piece of glass on it, a clear piece of glass. My own personal preference is I don't want anything on that lens, on that sensor. I want the sensor to be naked. So they remove that. Once they remove that piece of glass from the sensor, the camera is what they call a full spectrum camera, meaning all the light hits it and there's nothing that's stopped. So you can then pick up whatever the sensor is capable of picking up. And the sensor is capable of picking up infrared as well as ultraviolet. Then you have to put a filter on top of the lens to allow you to pick what bandwidth you want to look at. So when I take these videos of these UFOs that you've just seen, I typically use an infrared filter on top of the lens. Remember the filter that was on the sensor is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So I can now pick the filter I want, and the filter is like a round thing, like that goes on top of the lens. I can pick the filter I want to go into the exact bandwidth that I want to get, and that's measured in terms of nanometers. So the total cost for everything is around $4,000 to get the camera, the lens, the conversion. You need a good tripod. Once you start adding all the bells and whistles, you're talking around $4,000 for that type of a camera. But on the other hand, it works. We give you the clear instructions for how to do it, and we give you lots of examples. And we have on farsightprime.com, we not only have the footage that we have on Instagram, you can see some of the examples that I just showed you, plus more. But on farsightprime.com, we not only show extensive, collections of those footage, but we have the remote viewing results of who those guys are that are flying those things. We go right into the ships. We follow them to where they came from. We follow them to where they're going. Full public projects on everything that you can possibly imagine. Now, our projects actually cover everything from not just the videos that we're shooting, but we have public projects that go into human leadership that's been compromised. We have projects on President Xi Jinping of China. We have projects on Vladimir Putin. We have a project on the 2024 election, the aftermath. We went into the future to see that. All this stuff can be done with remote viewing. We even have a project on Nikola Tesla and Elon Musk. And then we have a whole set of projects on the various extraterrestrials, both the good ones and the bad ones. And then we have lots of projects on ET wars. In this solar system, we've had a lot of wars. For example, the asteroid belt used to be a planet, and that planet was blown up in a war. That's why Mars was sort of that was a result. The barrenness of Mars was a result of that war. And basically what happened was, if you look at Mars now, one half of Mars has craters all over it, really big craters. The other half of Mars, the other side, has no craters. So what happened is there was something that blew up on one side of Mars, and it made craters all over it, like shotgun blast. And then the asteroid belt became the asteroid belt. There was a war between Mars and this other planet. You can call this other planet Maldek. And it produced a shock wave that went throughout the entire solar system. Evidence of that shock wave can even be seen on Iapetus. On one side of Iapetus, you see a black spot where the shock wave just sort of hit it and put a deposit of all types of soot on top of Iapetus, on one spot of Iapetus where it hit the shock wave. But basically, that's what happens. So that was an ET war that happened here in our own solar system. We even did a thing on the dinosaurs. Believe it or not, the dinosaurs were at a time when there actually was a sentient reptilian race that looked sort of humanish in the sense that they had a head, they had bodies, arms, and things like that. And they didn't come from here, but it was essentially a reptilian-dominated planet with all types of reptiles all over the place, including dinosaurs. And they had an intelligent reptilian species that also lived here, didn't come from here, but it lived here. Now, the mainstream science says, well, there was an asteroid that came by and cracked into the Earth that killed off the dinosaurs. Bull. That's not what happened. There was asteroids, yes, but it was an attack. It was a military attack. And we described the whole thing, all done under totally blind conditions with all the remote viewers corroborating, all getting the same stuff, which is remarkable if you think about it. None of the remote viewers know anything about the project, and they all describe the same thing. And what basically happened is human-looking ETs came into the solar system, and they had been having battles with reptilians for a long time. They wanted to get the reptilians out of Earth, and what a very common method of warfare among the ETs is to drag like asteroids along and throw them at a place. And rather than just drop nuclear bombs on something, they throw the asteroids at a place, and that's what happened. And then there was a huge collection of humanoid ET ships around the planet. When the sentient reptilians were facing that, they had to get into their ships and leave. The human-looking ET ships were in orbit, and they shot down all the reptilians that were trying to leave. That's how the whole dinosaur thing ended. So, that type of stuff you simply don't get in mainstream science. You don't get to these things, but that's an example of the type of thing that we do. We did a project on Operation High Jump, which happened after World War II, and that's not in dispute. Operation High Jump did happen. What happened was World War II was coming to a close. The Nazis in Germany were defeated, and when the Allied forces went into Germany, they discovered that there was something in Antarctica, like an Antarctica base of Nazis. It was the last refuge of them. And the Americans sent a fleet that included an aircraft carrier and 13 ships, about 5,000 soldiers armed to the teeth. It had lots of aircraft. It had a submarine. It had a lot of repair ships. It had everything, destroyers. And they went to Antarctica, and the official statement was that they were looking to see if there might be a place where an airfield could be put. Now, who sends a fleet armed to their teeth to look for an airfield? You send one boat, maybe one aircraft. You don't send a fleet armed to the teeth. Anyway, they went there, and they got their butt kicked, and that's not in dispute. They got their butt kicked, and they had to withdraw. The Americans were actually told that it was Nazis using ET ships flying those things, and Admiral Byrd had to simply withdraw everybody. And the Americans were shocked completely. They thought that they uncovered a Nazi base in Antarctica that could essentially wipe out the U.S. military in half an hour. And that's when the agreements were signed between the negative ETs and the American forces. What happened was the negative ETs basically had a meeting, and we went into that. That's another one of our projects. They had a meeting, and they said, hey, we heard you had a problem with, what are those nasty Nazis in Antarctica? Oh, hey, we'll take care of that for you. No problem at all. Just sign here. That's how the original agreements were actually signed. What they didn't tell them is that those same ETs were the ones who set up that base in Antarctica in the first place. And the Nazis weren't actually flying the ET ships. They weren't high enough ranking to do that. They actually had ETs flying the ships, but the Americans thought they were Nazis. There were some Nazis in the Antarctica base, but they were not the ones actually flying the ships. But the Americans thought they were flying the ships. Anyway, that's how the original agreements started, and those are the ones they're trying to renew now. And we have a zillion other projects covering everything you can possibly imagine. It's basically a complete revision of human history, going back thousands of years, using remote viewing, because everything you've been taught in schools is simply wrong. Everything is taught is wrong. It's just bogus, and it doesn't even make a sense. Like, for example, the Great Pyramid of Giza. You're told that people running around in loincloths and camels move those 80-ton blocks and cut them out of a quarry with such precision that you can't even stick a human hair between them, and move them hundreds of miles and put them into the build the pyramid. You can't even move those blocks today with modern equipment. And it's just totally ludicrous. But the reality was, back in those days, they had ETs running the place as a prison, and there was ET technology that was moving those blocks. But so even on the face of things are ludicrous, but they still teach it in the schools. So we had to revise the entire history of humanity with our projects. And after we basically got that under our belt, that's when we came to the final stage, is to force the disclosure thing by showing people how to make their own videos of the UFOs. So we're in the final. This is the crunch time, guys. This is the crunch time.
Well, I have a pretty good question for you. I'm a 49-year-old MyLab victim. I've been in these programs that you've done remote viewing studies on, especially the Tony Rodriguez one, for example. Your work has actually helped me recover memories, emotional and some cognitive memories. So what I wanted to ask you is speaking of the cockroaches, and I also refer to this matrix as the transdimensional AI planetary consciousness simulation in the social media work that I do, and I often reference your work. So the question I have is in regard to the cockroaches, because they come in different forms. And since I've gone public a little over a year ago, thanks to Rob's help, I have had a tremendous amount of resistance. I have had sound effects on my cell phone, on my landline. I've had them hack into my computers. I have had censorship through YouTube and a variety of other areas. And I've also had a lot of pushback from, the people around me. And since you're in academia, and since this goes back as far as it does, can you tell everybody what you've been through in regard to this pushback? Have you gotten psychic attacks? Have you had technical issues? Have you had money-related issues? Have you had your colleagues tell you that maybe you need to look for a new job? Have you had your friends and family push back and actually question your mental health? Because that's what I'm going through. So if you can please elaborate on that. And I've got one other question for you, and I'll be done, and you can be questioned by Rob. Sorry, my mouth is totally.
No, it's okay. It's great.
Down without water tonight.
No, it's great. Of course, everyone. When I started this thing, I started this thing as a mathematical social scientist who was a star. I had taught in the major universities, and I was basically considered a star in terms of the mathematical applications in social sciences. And when I started this, it was a pretty big uproar. And everybody in academia thought I was deluded. And people were embarrassed that I was given tenure and things like that at a major university, things like that. But, I'm highly competitive. But, I'm going to give you one of my secrets. I shouldn't really tell you my secrets, but at this point, people know. People that are out there know. There's two things to be competitive. You can be like wide world of wrestling. You want to be competitive and fight the fight right then and there and knock the guy down. Okay? But that's not my style. My style is to go the long run. So people can sort of attack me. It's okay. Let them attack. I last longer. I continue. I'm still there. I don't go away. You have to wait, and I'm willing to wait a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, and to keep doing the work. And I've seen so many people gloat. We pushed him out. We got rid of him. We really did a job. 6 weeks later, people have forgotten what those people have said, and I'm still doing stuff. So the issue, and there's a great Jewish saying. Now, if any in the audience are Jewish, you have to be New York Jew. Now, if you're from North Carolina or California, you probably never heard this saying. But New York Jews, they know this. Now, you have to say it with a shrug. Okay, now here it is. You just have to live long enough. It's great.
I like that.
You just have to live long enough. Meaning, if you live long enough, your enemies, they all retire, they all die off, it's gone, and you're still standing. So it's a New York Jewish phrase, a saying that's really worth its weight in gold. Anyway,
so survival is key.
Yeah, you just have to live
it's
long
like,
enough.
I think I'm dealing with some of the same stuff as Nate, and I'm like, you know what? If I just survive, then maybe I'll get some recognition for all the work I've done.
You just keep
as far as like my podcast, I don't know.
You just keep it. If what you're saying is true, just keep saying it. Just don't worry about the people who are pushing you back. So that answers your question. Has it been pushed back? Yes. No one's laughing anymore. No one's calling me deluded anymore. At the very worst, they're just holding their breath. They can't believe what's happening. And now it's not a dispute anymore. Now we have the whistleblowers coming through Congress, like David Rush and others, and you have senators saying this is this is actually very real. We have tons of other people. So all of this is is not a dispute anymore. And now you can't even dispute the existence of the UFOs because you don't have to believe anybody else's picture. You can make your own picture. So so let me answer your question one way. You just have to live long enough. Now, there's only one more thing I want to say. We did a full project on Tony Rodriguez thing on 2 instances in that. And, we found that the 2 of the instances that we looked at, one on Ceres and the other on Mars, were real. That happened. And I want to tell you, there was something spooky. When Yeme Genet, one of our remote viewers, was remote viewing a mantis type being, an insectoid being in Mars, standing over Tony Rodriguez, and his ISB self was plucked out and put into another body, and that's how this 20-year thing goes. It can that's how it happens. But when she was actually looking at that, she knew nothing about the project. She knew nothing about the target. She knew nothing of anything. She did it all by herself. She was just told there was a target. She did her work, all by herself without any guidance. But I saw the video, and you can actually see the video of her doing this stuff. When she was describing it, she was describing this mantis being on top of Tony Rodriguez. It was almost word for word what was in his book, Super Soldiers, the series book. And I actually, in the video project, I actually copied the paragraph where he was describing it, and the actual written words that she wrote in her session, what she actually said, and people can compare it. It was freaky. It had, and I've been around this for a long time, but when I saw that, and when I heard her, do her stuff on video, I had goosebumps. That was freaky. That was actually, she's good. I mean, as Herm said, she's the best human telepath I've ever seen. So with regard to your 20 and back issues, 20 and back program, I can't say for certain that, it happens, but it's impossible for me to think that it doesn't happen, because I know the extraterrestrials have the capability of pulling anybody out of their body and then using them. I know they have the ability of rattling the ISB afterwards so that they don't have the memory. And I know they have the ability to move in time and space. So I know they have the ability to plop them in. I also know that the ETs that we're talking about are bad ETs, and they use these people for all types of things. Everything that Tony Rodriguez wrote about, we have witnessed under totally blind conditions with the ETs. So I can't say that the 20 and back program actually exists in the sense that I was in it or something like that. But I can say there is no possible way you can convince me that it doesn't exist, because those ETs do that stuff. That's exactly why they want all the ISBs in this planet. That's exactly why this is a prison system. They use those ISBs to do exactly what Tony Rodriguez wrote in his book. And we have tons of sessions that were done under totally blind conditions where they describe what's happening to these people, almost word for word what Tony Rodriguez wrote in his book. So in an indirect way, yeah, and in two separate instances, we actually verified two separate things from his book that actually did happen. So, I can't say I verified absolutely every little thing or everything that you've had done or that you've experienced, but I can say that there's no possible way that this type of thing wouldn't happen, because those ETs do this kind of stuff. So anyway, that was a long answer to your question. You had a second question as well?
Well, it's actually a third, and I've added a little bit to it because somebody in the chat had a question as well about an event that's coming. So let me just get the short one out of the way, and I guess I'll combine the two. The first one, the first half of this has to do with something I became aware of being a victim of these programs, is that the negative extraterrestrials will sell lifetimes to assisting races. In other words, if you have a person in their society that's going through a period of mental illness, because a lot of them don't go through childhood, they stay as an adult. They come into the world one time and then they're constantly moved to a new container body through, cloning and so forth. And because of their lifetime as an adult is so long, it doesn't have the renewal process, then they engineer worlds where they stage engineered lifetimes, which is what I think Mars was. The question I would have is are you familiar with that? Because there's a lot of people coming here that are what they call star seeds, aren't really aware that they are, and they're not going to be awakened to that fact. I had a member of my family who was one of those. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Have you heard of that concept? And the second one has to do with the fact that there is an event coming and we're moving towards this. It's an event where the human race is set free. And somebody had mentioned that here. And they also were asking you, you brought up the fact that you had said that you were from a higher dimension. I've got those memories intact myself. We're all coming here to do something. We're all waking up to those roles. And I just wanted to mention, too, that a lot of the hijacking that's happening to a lot of us, like myself, I mean, I've been made sick. I've had a horrible life because of this, is that they hijack us and then they repeatedly abduct us. Some of the people are used in the New Age movement as influencers that are mind controlled. And you see that a lot because they'll push the narrative of the extraterrestrials. And then you have others who, come out like myself, who say they're victims of these things. So there's a hijacking going on, and they're utilizing the ones that are coming here to help and basically turning them around and using them in these horrible programs. So it's not really a question, it's an observation. But what I wanted to mention or just ask you, are you familiar with a future event that's going to be taking place that we're all working towards? And if there's anything you'd like to share about that. And that's pretty much it. So I know I'm kind of all over the place there because it's a lot of complexity.
And here's the question, Dr. Brown. It says, this is from AM Ghost. He says, please ask Dr. Brown about the event. He totally knows more. He just recently told us that he came here from a mission from a higher dimension. That was the question from the chat.
Well, I'll answer it in my own way. I have a video up on our YouTube channel as well as farsightprime.com. Our YouTube channel is called Farsight. Just the word Farsight. And there, as well as on farsightprime.com, I have a special video that is one of our, what originally was one of our intelligence briefings. I give an intelligence briefing once a month on Farsight Prime, but this video we put on YouTube as well. and it's my own biographical background with extraterrestrials. And the reason I had to do that, we kept that secret until now, until this year, because it was just too controversial, too out there for people.
Right.
But this is the disclosure time. This is the crunch time, and we're getting to the point where other people were going to be able to describe me and describe Farsight, and then I'd have to correct the record. So I had this come out with this now, my own background with regard to the extraterrestrials, so that so you can introduce yourself to people only once. Once they hear something about you, you have to correct the record or something. So you better they had to hear it from me first before they heard it from somebody else. And basically, it's this. I've been working with extraterrestrials from the very beginning. I did not come here as a recycled person in the prison system. I came from outside. I was born as a normal human in a normal human body with normal human parents. While I was growing up, I had regular contacts with extraterrestrials. These are not things that were come out in memory recall or hypnosis or QHHT or anything. I had, these are just things that happened. I would be like 8 and 9 years old, for example. I'd be in bed and there'd be 2 ETs on the right side, little like the gray guys with the wraparound eyes, 2 on the right side of the bed and 2 on the left side of the bed. And they'd be there at night. And I wasn't threatened. I wasn't abducted. I always wondered what they were doing, but there was 2 on the right and 2 on the left. And this was way before Whitley Strieber came out with the stuff about the gray. Nobody was talking about grays beforehand, but I had 2 on the right and 2 on the left. And in the morning, I'd sort of say, I wonder what those guys were doing. But I wasn't threatened. They were friendly. They were just there. They were sort of, I mean, they weren't like chatty or anything like that, but they were just 2 on the right, 2 on the left. Just one for the longest time. And then I'm cutting a long story short, but I've had regular contact with extraterrestrials for a very long time. When Farsight started back in 1990s, we had a physical extraterrestrial show up every night for 1 year. And the extraterrestrial, we called him the gray dude. And he would show up and at 3 a.m. and would stun our webmaster at the time and give her a ton of information that she was supposed to relay to me in the morning. And she was going to the bathroom, she'd get stunned, get the information. She wakes up in the morning, comes in and tells me. That was the time when we were being attacked like all over the place. They had the agency I just call it the agency because it's a governmental, what do you call it? I won't necessarily, there's no need to say the exact branch it came out of, but there was an agency that was orchestrating attacks on us. And it involved radio and it involved all types of deception and other things. We needed guidance. We were rattled. We needed guidance. Those people had way more resources than we did in the beginning. We needed guidance to get through that. And that's what we got. Every single night we had a message, do this, do that. The gray dude would tell us what was going on, what everybody was doing, what sort of plots were being hatched, everything. In addition, the gray dude came out gave us a ton of information on procedures. So that's when we started to really change our procedures to be much more advanced. We started to come up with new, highly technical methods. Well, we didn't come up with those out of our own head. we were being told what to do. And so we got all these, we have a whole bunch of very advanced procedures that work way better than the military procedures. And then after 1 year, that completely stopped. But at that point, we had other ways of communicating on a regular basis with them. Then we have ongoing regular communications with them, physical communications where we interact with people. So the military, the agency, knew this, and of course they had all of our phones bugged and everything. They used to follow us from the very beginning to now, And they were fascinated by it. And we know this because one of their people actually came to us, showed us who he was, and the whole thing, gave us total proof from recordings of transcripts of very sensitive phone calls. I mean, they gave us total proof of who they were, and basically told us everything that was going on. They were fascinated by it. They couldn't figure out why the ETs had picked us to have this personal interaction. I mean, they didn't have those interactions in the agencies. They said, why should we? What's so special about us? So, but anyway, so it was at that time, after we were like really badly attacked, we sort of went under for a while and became sort of silent, but we worked on procedures and science of remote viewing by ourselves silently. And then we sort of, remember the Jewish phrase, you just had to live long enough. We hung around long enough. We came back and came back stronger than ever. But the point is that we had the guidance that we needed to keep on going. So we had protection. We had protection from the good guys, extraterrestrials, but we also had protection from the military side. So part of the military side started to act as our protectors as well. We would be crushed like a bug if we didn't have protection from both of those things. There's no possible way Farsight would exist. There's no possible way Farsight would exist with all these projects, with all the remote viewing, and now showing you how to take pictures, videos of your own, of UFOs. There's no way in the world we would exist if we didn't have protection. Go ahead, you had a question.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to say that I'm glad that people like you are protected because we need you in the world. But one thing I wanted to say that I have my friend Ryushin Malone. He's in the chat. He's from the Orion Lines, and Nate here, his website is Voices of Orion. So like they both kind of have this connection that maybe the evil ETs might have come from Orion. And a lot of research kind of points to that. And I was kind of seeing if that kind of lined up with like what you guys have found at the Farsight. Do you think that these ETs might be coming from Orion, or does anything show that, or like what do you think? Like, is it a possibility?
There's two primary groupings of the bad ETs. We can also talk about the good ETs. I can now say, and I talk about it openly now, that's my side. The good ETs are my side, and we're trying to foment a revolution on the planet to rise up through disclosure. However, the bad ETs have basically two sides, two elements to them. And they are what we call the Orion group, and the Orion group predominantly look like you and I. They're very humanish. If you had an Orion person sitting next to you, you wouldn't know that they were an ET. And the other one is the reptilians. Now, there are many different groups, so I'm simplifying a lot. But those two groups are normally competitors, but they're here on Earth and they're allies of convenience right now. But they're normally competitors. Now, the Orions, let's talk about them, for example. They were the ones that ran the prison system in the old days. They were the ones that created all the Greek and Roman gods. Zeus, for example, was an Orion. He wasn't flying around in his chariot. It was a ship. Zeus was not a god. He was a serial rapist that was also a prison warden. He was running the prison. He was a rapist. He used to go around and just rape young girls. That's what he was, but he was a prison warden. That's where he got his power to do this. And he would get his ship, his people, he would order them to take them to various locations. And we have sessions describing exactly what he did. He should be the one in the prison. But anyway, Ra, Zeus, all the major gods, Hathor, they all existed, but they weren't gods. They were people like you and I, and they were coming out of the Orion system. And so that section of the galaxy was a very fascist, authoritarian section. Our galaxy has basically gone through a 1,000,000-year Holocaust. That's way worse than the Holocaust that happened in World War II. So there were like 11 million people killed in the Holocaust in World War II. It's hard to imagine that that's small by a lot compared to what happened in the galaxy. This galaxy has basically been a Holocaust for a long time. The basic wars in the galaxy have basically resolved. They're mostly done. They're not like actively fighting right now. So what has happened is Earth, set up as a prison planet, is a leftover piece of the Orion conflicts. So what happened was Earth is not a good place to have a long-term civilization. It's geologically unstable. About every 25,000 years, some major disruption happens. The sun burps. There's a major pole shift that happens on the planet, and basically everything gets wiped out and starts all over again. You need a stable planet that's stable for like 1,000,000 years to have a long-term civilization. But because of that, it was a nice place for refugees to come from, to go to. So during the Orion Wars, they had the same death traps that were set up around that. If you look at authoritarian powers like Russia, actually the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and China during Mao Zedong's time, they didn't let people leave. That was the whole thing. People would have fled those countries. So part of the keeping of an authoritarian system is keeping the borders intact so people can't get out. So that's how it was with the Orion system. They used to keep everybody inside so they couldn't get out. And death was no longer a means of transportation. You get recycled back in. But there were some people that managed to figure out how to get out. And so they started to leak out. And they came here because this was a planet that no one seemed to want. It was a very rich biologically, and it was a place that long-term civilizations didn't want to hang out here because it was geologically unstable. And then the Orion people, they found out that there was leakage, that there were people coming here as refugees, and they came and they set up this place as a prison. So that's how it became a prison in the first place. Now the reptilians, that's another whole story. The reptilians and the Orions separately, they occupy sections of the galaxy that are pretty large sections. They consider that their territory. And Earth, they consider their stuff. So there's other sections of the galaxy that are run by the free will ETs. Those are my people. Those are my side. That's my side. Now, the free will ETs cannot militarily defeat the Orions and the reptilians combined. It's another war. It's another 1,000,000-year war. It's too big a deal. They can't defeat them. However, they can defend themselves. They have lots of resources. And right now, because of the crucial nature of this particular planet, they are way more dominant in the solar system, meaning they could beat the Orions and the reptilians militarily, but the only way they can do that in the solar system is if the humans actually rise up and do this. Now, the bad ETs, the reptilians, and the Orions have agreements with governments, and that's been a problem. They're written agreements, and the free will ETs have to accept that, but they've been trying to change things. The bad ETs have the politicians and much of the military-industrial complex in their pocket. Bribery, mental manipulation, all types of things. You're not going to get human leadership coming out and talking about this and so on. So the good ETs, however, have basically won the hearts and minds of the people. They have been seeding information into Hollywood, for example, for a great many years. So what happens is a scriptwriter in Hollywood would wake up in the morning, and during the night, the good ETs would have fed him information or her information about an idea for a script. And the guy will wake up, or the woman would wake up and say, "That's a great idea for a script. I guess I thought of this myself. This is a wonderful," and they'd write up a script and so on. Now, the free will ETs will not manipulate that person. They will not force the person to write the script, but they can insert the idea, and then the person by free will can say, "That's a great idea," and they can write the script up. That's where you get the Star Wars stuff coming out, the Star Trek stuff coming out, the Matrix movies, all of these ideas that bring up interesting concepts that are related to the process that's been going on for a long time. All of that stuff has been seeded into these writers, including novel writers and science fiction novel writers, as well as, but mostly the movies and television stuff. And by free will, the producers and the writers have gone along with it. Now, the the bad ETs don't want any of this stuff to happen, but they can't stop that. They basically can't stop anything that's a free will decision, because the free will ETs have guns to their head. They can't. The free will ETs really are big with regard to the free will thing. If you remember Tony Rodriguez's book, when Tony was originally abducted, the last thing the two guys that abducted him said, "Oh, we have one more thing we have to do." He said, "Do you agree to do this 20-year and back program?" And Tony, not knowing what he was getting into, said, "Oh, sure, I'll be an ambassador for communication between extraterrestrials and humans. It'll be great. I'll play my role." And they said, "That's what we needed to hear." And then he was abducted. So they needed to get an agreement from him. And the reason they needed an agreement from him is because of the free will ETs. They have this dominant presence here. But once they get an agreement, they can do anything they want with them. And that's what they did. They did anything they want with them. And that's where the human situation is right now. We're trying to break the animal's back, the animal in terms of the oppressive burden that's on humanity. But to do that, there has to be a free will choice by the populace. And that's the crunch time that we're slowly trying to get to that. And you can say, well, what do you mean it's a crunch time? Well, a year ago, you would have said, there's nothing. But now you have people like David Grush, you have other whistleblowers, you have Senator Marco Rubio. People are just talking about it openly now, and it's getting into the press more and more. And now we're starting to tell people how to make video recordings of the UFOs yourself on demand, anywhere you happen to be. And so, this is the crunch time. The next year and a half, 2 years, this is it. And by the way, the ETs, the good ETs, the free will ETs, this answers your question. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to this part of your question about the future event. Let me tell you the honest truth. We don't know what's going to happen. We tried other methods to bring this planet to a better resolution. They haven't worked. This is our last chance to do this. We don't know how this is going to turn out, but we think it will work. We think it will work. Past attempts that have been done would be all major religions came from extraterrestrial manipulation. Now, all major religions, none were just homegrown. And so, for example, let's just pick one. We could do Vedic society, Hinduism, we could do Buddhism. Let's go to Christianity, for example. The basic idea of Christianity was some guy who had his memory intact was basically his job was to introduce some ideas, that love is the energy that drives the universe, forgive and forget, chill out, things like that. And it was being introduced to a slave society. The Greek and Roman gods and the Greek and Roman civilizations, they all had slaves. It was a slave society. So he was trying to sort of challenge that. And the idea was to let those ideas circulate in the society for a few hundred years and see if it can change things. It didn't work. The reptilians and the Orions, they were able to, given enough time, they would manipulate everything. So the Greek and Roman gods, those things did start to decay, but then they started up the Catholic Church, where you had a saint replacing every one of the Greek and Roman gods. So you had a different saint for a different purpose. And then you had, but a very hierarchical structure. Then you had, if you sin, you will burn in hell. In order to be granted eternal life, you must get on your knees and beg. Now listen, if they were telling you that you could burn in hell for all of eternity, then they're admitting they can't kill you in the first place. How could you be granted eternal life and be banished in hell for eternity at the same time? I mean, it's crazy. So all of that stuff, all of the good news was changed into bad stuff, was changed into stuff where, fear and loathing and anger and all that stuff, and the various gods that you had to pray to, which are now called saints, all that stuff was perverted. And so what we have now, and this happened with all the major religions, they all got perverted. So they can say, well, what is different that we're trying to do now that we couldn't do before? The difference is we waited until technology we had to, with the bad ETs had to be sufficiently disrupted so that the society would start to regrow. You'd have modern architecture, you'd have starting of technology. Now we have a point where technology and rapid communication across the planet is possible. So the difference between now and the past is we're trying to make the disclosure process happen quickly. That's the difference. It's no longer seeding information in the past and letting it percolate throughout the society for a few hundred years. Now it's one day nothing, the next day everything. And with the idea being with the rapid methods of communication, that the transformation will be such that the Orions and the Reptilians will not be able to control the situation because it will happen too quickly. That's the variable that's changing. We're change one thing at a time, and that's the big one: the speed at which the disclosure process is going to happen. But we don't know how it's going to turn out. We honestly don't. We live in a situation of multiple timelines. That's a whole physics thing. I don't think we want to get into it right now. But multiple timelines. There are situations where everything does work out, and other situations where they don't work out. But there's a mean, there's an average, and the predominant outcome we want to be a successful one. A ton of work has gone into changing this planet, not just get the technology out there, but changing the way people think through all the movies and television shows and understanding of basic concepts. You have no idea how many people have been involved in changing this to the point where your podcast exists. That's what we're talking about. We had to wait until this happens. And now we have the disclosure process kicking up. But you're asking me, what about the event? Well, there's no single event because you have multiple timelines. And we don't know for sure how it will happen. I do know what will happen if we fail. If we fail, the good ETs will withdraw from the system. The bad ETs will have won. And they have everybody. At that point, the good ETs will withdraw and they will go to another place in the galaxy, another time, and we'll try something new. We'll try to regroup and start all over again. And the bad ETs are taking advantage of the fact that we totally are fanatically attached to this idea of free will. That's what's going on right now. So if they can trick human leadership into signing new agreements, there's nothing that the good ETs can do about it, and they will withdraw. So we do know what will happen if it fails, but we have good reason to believe it will work. And I must tell you that there are wars going on behind the scenes that you don't see. Wars in the military ranks. There's lots of really great military people that want disclosure. I tell you, I guarantee you, there's lots of people fighting for this. And then on the negative side, there's people holding back. We honestly don't know how this is going to turn out. But there will be disclosure. There will be a moment when this happens.
I just wanted to thank
That's
you for
fascinating.
everything that you're doing, as well as to say that it's an honor to meet another person like yourself who's in a similar situation that I am. My friends and I have been asked to do similar things that you're doing right now. Similar meaning in the same realm, but obviously a lot different. We're not doing remote viewing work. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned something that I was very curious about. You said we've been going through a 1,000,000-year Holocaust here. And that's something that I was told as well, not just through my higher self, but when I did have some positive ET contacts shortly before I was able to get out of the programs. I was told 1,000,000 years. Where did you get that number at?
Well, a number of people, we interact. Farsight is an ET-based organization. We have had contacts with the ETs regularly. They help us directly on all of our major projects. They still help us directly. So we have our own sources of information, but there are other people that you can find who have talked about this. Lisa Royale is someone who's done a lot of channeling work. We're not in favor of channels, but she has done some interesting work, and she has talked about it. And a lot of the stuff that she talks about does in fact happen, is in fact accurate. Not all of it, but a lot of it is accurate, and that's a good source where you can sort of see that description of the Holocaust. She's not been telling the whole story because, of whatever reason, perhaps because she's concerned about the shock that would happen if people saw it. But it was a really bad situation. They had fighting between the groups, between the good ETs and the bad ETs. And the good ETs did try to invade. They did try the invasion thing. And the bad ETs blew up an entire planet in response. That level of technology does exist. And, the good ET said, well, how can you fight a war like that? It's like nuclear war on the planet Earth. How can you fight an unwinnable war if the other side is willing to blow up drop a nuclear bomb and, destroy the whole continent? Well, you can do that with the planet as well. Remember, that's what happened to Maldek, the planet that was there in between Mars and Jupiter. That's now the asteroid belt. That was a planet. Now, I'll give you a good example. A lot of mainstream people say that's crazy. How can you say it was a planet? What do you know what you're talking about? But look at the asteroids. Let me show you how ridiculous the argument is that it wasn't a planet. They say, the mainstream says, the asteroid belt was just junk that was left over from the primordial solar nebula. Guys, those asteroids are big. Ceres is like a little small planet. Those are big. Those are heavy rocks, solid rocks. You don't get solid rocks out of the primordial dust. You need a gravity source to collect the dust and to mold it into rocks. You don't get rocks without gravity. So at one point in time, those big asteroid rocks had to have a gravity source to crush them together to make the rocks in the first place. In addition, the asteroids have a tremendous amount of evidence of extreme heating, melting. They were exposed to extreme heat. And this is actually something that some mainstream astronomers have talked about and written about them. So there was both the necessary component of gravity to make the rocks in the first place, and then secondly, the heat was an extreme heat that they were exposed to. So, mainstream physicists, mainstream astronomy people, they just ignore all that, and then they come up with stories about the primordial solar nebula coming out of their heads. There's no data to support that. They're just saying that because they want to avoid the obvious conclusion that there was a planet and it was blown up. Like, how do you blow up a planet? Well, you can't have a planet blow up without extraterrestrials. So they'd have to talk about the extraterrestrials. And then you'd have to talk about warfare. And they don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So they say primordial nebula. But it's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Would you like to go, Rob?
I got to do another I'm sorry. I got to do another show at 7. But you have one more question, Nate? Or 7 Eastern, I got to do another show. So it's like 30, 20 minutes.
Okay. You're absolutely right. There's I read a scientific article where they showed it looked like a planetary core in the asteroid belt, and they were talking about how much money it was worth to mine it. It was this astronomical amount with all the different minerals and metals and stuff. And I think they even stressed that it was in no way a planetary core, as if to go along with the scientific storyline. So you're absolutely right about that. And I also think that a lot of the asteroid belt it's actually been older terraforming cycles, for the lack of a better word, across the solar system, that this isn't the original alignment of the planets. It's been moved around over eons of time. And then some of these types of activities create these asteroids because things are destroyed. There's, collisions and so forth. So the whopper of the question here is a more controversial one. I've been watching your stuff for a long time, and you're always very down on spirit guides and so forth. And I am too, because I've been through the the New Age, spiritual ringer, so to speak, as well as the occult, because of the programs that I've been in. That's what led me into it. They tried to recruit me to be a social media influencer to push the nonsense before, or actually when I started to go public. So my question to you would be are you aware that there is a military program in conjunction with extraterrestrials to engineer the New Age movement, starting with George Van Tassel, going back as far as the 70s, maybe even the 60s, where they created this program where they take MILAB victims, military abduction victims that came into be after the treaties that were signed in the 1940s, who were then used. And what I mean is that once they fracture the soul, they put a placeholder in society, which is myself and others, and to use them to perpetuate the New Age, movement, which is a way to create, basically a way to condition the souls that are coming here to be agents of change, and to railroad, actually to push them into a direction where they're not useful anymore for humanity. Do you have anything you'd like to share about that, or what do you know about that? Because I see the New Age movement as basically what the Christians talk about as the end times deception, because it is basically the occult wrapped up in a white light package and then put back out there. It doesn't seem normal or even sensible that humanity would live on a planet with no psychic senses. Everyone else in the universe has one up on them in that regard. And then we have spirit guides, some limitless, endless manpower out there to help assist us on whether or not we're going to win at a slot machine, or are we going to get a promotion next week at work? It just seems absolutely absurd. I'd just like to get your thoughts on that and what you think is going on.
It's a good question. Let me answer it in the following way. The New Age community is an important access point to change the entire planet and to challenge the system. And because they're open to the ideas of telepathy and things like that. The bad ETs know that. And so the good ETs, there's no way that the good ETs can really do anything with the New Age community, because the bad ETs use it as a dominant means of manipulating the planet. If you think about it, who's talking about UFOs and extraterrestrials and remote viewing and telepathy and stuff like that? It's the people you just talked about in the New Age community. So the bad ETs say, well, we have to control that information that comes through that community. So they have a ton of people that do channeling, for example. And what the bad ETs do is say, this is great. Now, the channelers are some of the best people on the planet. They're really nice. They're honest. They're trying to make a contribution. They're great. But the information that they're getting is from the bad ETs. They're trying to manipulate what the public knows. They're trying to keep the information in a box. And so it's like a car. If you have your car and you leave the door open, you leave the window open and the keys in the car and the car unlocked, and you leave it outside. That's what a channeler is. A channeler is opening their minds up and letting another being come in and use the body and the voice to give a message and to get an audience, a regular audience, a growing audience. Well, who's going to look at your car? You leave your car with the window open, the keys in the car. That's like the channeler. Who's going to mess with your car? Now, if you have honest people that walk by, what are they going to do? Oh my gosh, look, the person left their window open and the keys are there. What do we should do? I don't know. Just leave it. Maybe they'll come back soon. Okay? But they're not going to do anything with your car. Who's going to jump into your car? It's the thief. The thief is going to take the car. Hey, look at this. We got an open car. The keys are in the car. The window's open. It's unlocked. Great. We're going to take it. So that's what's happening with the channeling community. You get very highly organized extraterrestrials, bad ETs, organizing the information that's coming through the channeling community. And the channeling community has no way to vet it. There's no way to, they're totally open. They're totally honest. They report whatever they're actually given. They actually are communicating with the extraterrestrials, but they don't know who those extraterrestrials are. And that's the information that they're getting. The good ETs don't like to do that because they would then be another voice in the middle of that whole collection of junk information that's coming out. So the good ETs have stayed away from the channeling community by and large. There may be some exceptions, but generally speaking, the good ETs don't want to have themselves in that mix because it would not be very productive, because everything that they would say would be counteracted by the whole host of channelers that are coming out with information that's totally different. Okay, so here's some of the key things that you're going to want to look for from the channeling community. You're almost ready. Humanity is almost ready to take the spot, to become a galactic citizen. You're almost ready to have contact with the extraterrestrials, who are good, loving brothers and sisters waiting for humanity to take that final step to acknowledge their place in the galaxy. And we are waiting for you, and it's all good. And the disclosure process, the moment, it's almost here. It's almost here. Forever, it's almost here. It's going to happen in 2020, 2022. Oh, maybe 2025 is going to happen. 2028. By 2030, it will be here. You'll have contact. It goes on and on like that. And it's a joke. None of that is correct. It's all garbage being sent in by bad ETs who are trying to manipulate the New Age community so it doesn't become an attack vector for the good ETs. They don't want information to come out that would be truthful, because and you cannot blame the channels. The channels are honest people that are so much believing that they're trying to help, that they're opening themselves up, and they're opening themselves up. They're really trying to make a contribution. It's not the problem of the human channels. The point is they're being stolen. They're being used and manipulated. And the bad ETs are the ones who are controlling that whole dialogue. The good ETs are saying, well, we can't compete in that realm. So they've been focusing more on Hollywood. They've been focusing more on authors and Hollywood and stuff like that. So, but whenever you hear ETs talking about in channeling about humanity being almost ready, that's bull. This is a prison. We've been ready both of you guys, everybody listening to this, has been around for 1 million years. What do you mean almost ready? Where do you think all the humans came from? We're all Isbies. Where do we come from? Everybody on this planet is an extraterrestrial. We all came from some other place, and then we got stuck here. Now, there's a couple things you might want to know about the planet. The planet as a prison is literally a planet for bad people as well. That's why we have such a high proportion of people who do crazy ass things. The shooters, gun shooters, crazy people who have really pathological, psychological problems. They get thrown in here as well. But it's also the reason why this planet has the highest concentration of creatives, artists, inventors, geniuses anywhere in the galaxy. You see, if you're someplace that's got 1 million year civilization, everything that can be invented has already been invented. They don't need anybody to rock the boat. But what does an artist do? An artist and an inventor, we're always trying to come up with new ways to do things. Eventually, we tick those people off and they banish us. Then you can say, what are you talking about? That doesn't happen. Socrates. How did Socrates die? He went down to the marketplace and he simply asked people questions to create interesting discussions of the philosophies. That was enough for them to kill him. He had to drink the hemlock tea or be banished. They killed Socrates, and the only thing he did was to be down at the market and ask people questions. So if you're in another society and they've got the gravy train rolling, they don't want to be messed up, and you're trying to change things up by being an artist, a singer, or a visual artist, or whatever kind of art you are, or an inventor who wants to change up and do everything, eventually you irritate those people and they want to get rid of you. And this is a perfect place. You throw them in here. You can't kill an Isby. So you can't kill them. You got to get rid of them. Throw them into a prison where they get recycled for thousands of years. That's how you get rid of them. So that's why you have a concentration here of both really gross people, really sort of pathological perverts, but you also have an extremely high concentration of creative and geniuses. This is probably the highest concentration of creatives and geniuses anywhere in the galaxy. So once we have disclosure, we can start having these geniuses start focusing on things like the death traps. How do you start ending the problems of all these? You have really smart people on this planet. Once disclosure happens, you can start using this brain power to solve all types of problems, real problems. But you need disclosure first.
That's well said. Well, we're going to have to pick this up and do a part 2 because I got to do another show in 10 minutes. I need a little bit of time to kind of get away from the computer for a minute before I start a whole other show. But this has been amazing. I think we're getting we have 70, so we had up to 80 people watching live. So that's good. Like, I just want to thank you guys both for bringing this forward today. This has been, I think people are really liking it too. We have a lot of positive feedback in the comment section. So that's good. But, Nate, do you want to tell everybody where to find you first, and then Dr. Brown can tell everybody where to find him?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I just wanted to ask Dr. Brown something. Is it okay if I contact you by email and just run a couple ideas through and share some things?
Of course.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can find me on the Planetary Consciousness Project, which is a Telegram group, excuse me, and I have the hijacking contactee channel here on YouTube, Voices of Orion Project on Rumble. I don't have my website up yet because we've been dealing with financial issues, but psychic attacks and physical attacks on my health. I just got a partner recently who's a podcast partner with me, and so we're going to be getting it up off the ground soon. But that's pretty much it. Would you like to go, Courtney?
Sure. We have the first. There's sort of a sequence of things you probably want to do. If you want to see on your phone, some of the UFO footage that we collect with our own cameras, so you can see examples, my Instagram page, Courtney Brown Farsight, Farsight. Next step, go to our website, farsight.org, because it's a nonprofit, and look at the menu on the left, and you'll see links on how to make the videos yourself, but also nicely organized of all of our various projects. But then please go to farsightprime.com. Farsightprime.com is our streaming service. We couldn't rely on YouTube or any other place to host our stuff because we knew the disclosure process is coming, and we had to have our own stuff. Our farsightprime.com, it's actually hosted by Vimeo. It's got the same exact quality as Hulu, Netflix, Disney, Paramount Plus, it's HBO. It's a streaming service where all of our major projects are. Start watching those projects. Become a subscriber to farsightprime.com. So go in that sequence. Start with Instagram, Courtney Brown Farsight. Look at some of the videos. Go to our website, farsight.org. You can see descriptions of how to make your own videos as well as the organization of all of our various projects. And then go to farsightprime.com, become a subscriber, and actually watch some of these projects.
Okay. And that was amazing. And thank you guys all for tuning in tonight.